Alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Kya haal hai aap sabka? It's so nice to be here again. Talking to you all, chatting with you all, and bringing something more exciting today as well. And this month is a special month because we are celebrating the month of mental health. And mental health is absolutely a very an imperative topic for everyone to understand. And at FranklinCovey Pakistan, it's our mission to enable greatness in people everywhere. So we have decided especially to focus on mental well-being of women. Now, just a disclaimer, I know women are handling this panel, but we're not just going to talk about women. We invite all the men out there who represent half our population. And we can all make a great contribution towards women's mental health at home, at work, and in society at large. Before we can make a contribution, we have to understand what is going on. So 44%, I'm going to share with you some staggering statistics. 44% of the diseases that we have are believed to be associated in one way or the other with stress and mental strain. Now, imagine if our population is of 220 million, almost half, 100 million, 1 in every 2 people are vulnerable to mental health issues. And in a recent report by the World Health Organization, the suicide rate in Pakistan has crossed 8%, which translates into roughly 18 million people. And according to that data, Pakistan has only 0.19 psychiatrists that can help with mental issues for every 100,000 inhabitants, one of the lowest in this region. And then after COVID, you can just imagine what happened. Our physical and the economical effects, they amplified the psychological ramifications of lockdowns, uncertainty, and loss. I am Maryam Wazirzada. I'm one of the managing partners of FranklinCovey Pakistan, and I have
Huma. I'm Huma Maqsood. I am also one of the managing partners at FranklinCovey, and I am really glad to be here because I think this is a topic which is very close to my heart and to the heart of the organization that we represent, which is FranklinCovey. And I'm very, very pleased to introduce our panel. And in our panel, we have some people who are also very closely associated with this topic of mental health and women. And so I would introduce my panel to you. We have Dr. Khaula Tariq with us. She is a consultant psychiatrist at KEMU, Mayo Hospital, Lahore. She has been a focal point in spreading the awareness around unspeakable subjects such as postpartum depression and effects of women's psychological states. She will also be shedding some light on some taboos that are considered in our culture, and of course they have a lot of effect in the organizations that we work at also. She has extensive fieldwork that she has done in this area, so I'm looking forward to listening to her. We have, Maryam, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, we also have Gulbano Bokhari. She's more popularly known as GB, and great boss, I suppose, and has had over 2 decades of experience in FMCG and banking sector. So she'll give a lot of the enterprise, the work-related, insights. And she is a business management graduate from LAMS. Currently, she's giving back to the sector what she very proudly received in terms of learning and experience. Now, GB is a trainer, a consultant, and some of her most sought after topics are anti-harassment, gender sensitization, inclusion, and equality with selling and service excellence. She imparts her practical experience, research, and learning in a manner that the audience can relate and connect to. We also have Samrah Ibadat. Welcome you all, by the way. And she's the head of talent for the United Energy Pakistan. She has over 18 years experience in helping organizations structure their talent management processes, learning and development systems, and organizational culture. Something that is very close to our heart as well. culture. She has been a part of various local and multinational organizations in the telco, FMCG, sales and distribution, healthcare, and oil and gas industry. She has got her bachelor's in business administration from the University of Michigan. Welcome you all, ladies. Kya haal hai aapka? I hope you're all well. Today's topic, I just want to give you the title we forgot to mention. It's called Unwind the Mind, and we're going to talk about speaking about the unspeakable. So over to you. So Huma, who would you like to address?
I think we'll go by Dr. Khaula first. I was just wondering, because to give a preamble to what we are talking about, who would be a better person to talk about it than Dr. Khaula? With her great abilities and her vast empathy, I think I would like her to tell us a bit about this topic, specifically in women, and also about the research that she has done. And so we can then take some segue from that, and then we can invite our other panelists to take the discussion forward. Ji, Dr. Khaula.
Ji, thank you for having me over here. It's an honor to be part of this group, and Assalamu alaikum to everyone. So the topic that I was asked to address was basically around postpartum illness in women. And the reason it is very important to speak about it is because there are so many taboos and stigmas associated around the fact कि जी बच्चा तो हर कोई पैदा कर लेता है, that people really don't speak about it, and that creates an undue pressure on women in terms of their stress levels. To our outdoor department, she was chained to a stretcher. Her husband, the whole family was with her. She was constantly banging her head on the stretcher. And when we inquired why she was brought there, all they would say was, now this was the first time that I heard this terminology, that what is this chille ka jinn? And when we explored further into her case, what we found out was that she was suffering from postpartum psychosis, which is very common to happen during the first 2 weeks. It's a rare thing to happen overall if you look at the global prevalence rates, but it can happen. But the good part that they were not aware of was that it's completely treatable. Now, there are medications, there's an electroconvulsive therapy, a lot of options available to the women who were just not aware of these options that existed. We treated her, she got better. And the good part around that was that spreading this awareness through her was 2 villages around her village have started to come to the outpatient department and are seeking mental health advice. So hence the importance of spreading this awareness. If we look at statistics, Pakistan somehow has the highest rate of postpartum depression in the world. It is 28%, which is really, really high. And we really need to, educate women how to be well, how to be able to recognize their own emotions, how to distinguish between maybe a blue, a depression, and a psychosis. G.
You're absolutely right. The mental health itself, the problem is treatable, and most of it. And but the stigma which is associated with it actually poses a bigger problem than the problem itself. And specifically in Pakistan, the stigma. So you were talking about villages, but if you talk about upper social economic classes, if you talk about the SCCAs and SCCBs, that stigma carries on over there. The stigma, and that stigma actually
translates into relationships and things that are happening in the home, in the household.
Yes, and also you see, it also constrains us from accepting it or doing something about it. The shame and the guilt which is associated with it. And yes, people at some socioeconomic classes, people end up with going to the peers for the jinns, or or you just don't talk to anybody, and it keeps on manifesting inside you. And that is something that needs to be spoken about more so that people feel more comfortable talking about it.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Huma, regarding the stigma part, because there is a lot of research there. If you search that, the stigma is directly associated with your help-seeking behavior. Now, stigma can have different levels, like personal stigma, आपके बारे में लोग क्या कहेंगे, and then it is according to relations, and it is according to what the society expects of you, and all that translates into will you or will you not seek help. And if you are made aware of the options that exist regarding seeking help and effective treatment, it can go a huge way for them.
Exactly. And that's where I want to also understand with our panelists over here, maybe if we can ask Samrah, that what happens in organizations with respect to this stigma, and how can organization make it more easier for specifically women to accept or to feel comfortable about talking about any of these feelings? Because, you know, we all do have our emotions. We all have our ups and downs. We all do feel depressed at times, and sometimes it can go a bit more, the feeling can be more stronger. So what can organizations do to help or to create that kind of a safety net?
And especially because it's a male-dominated society, and even our work environments, our organizations, we see that it is a male-dominating, workplace. How can women, or what can organizations do to make it more conducive for such women to be able to express themselves, and for the organizations to understand this thing exists, this depression exists, and the manifestations exist?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yes, like you said, we live in a society which is deeply patriarchal, and most of the organizations are also male dominated. They're not just male dominated, they're centered and developed according to men, because obviously women have just now started to, in the recent few years, I would say, started to come into the workforce, and that shift is taking place globally. However, everything takes time, and it'll run its own course. Stigma, of course, is associated with various stages, not just postpartum, but at various stages of the pregnancy. Also, there are sometimes certain messages that are passed down to us. And I tell you, we talk about organizations, but it really starts with home, with the home. And this kind of messaging starts at home. So it puts a greater responsibility on the parents, especially the parents that are of this generation, to educate their children in a way that when they enter the workforce, all of these things are not alien to them. And in the workplace, I am not just witness to many of these things, I'm also subject at times. लेकिन आप एसोसिएट ब्लेम नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली जहाँ पे एजुकेशन एज अ सोसाइटी जो है वो कम हो, वहाँ किसी भी एक एलिमेंट को ब्लेम नहीं कर सकते. एंड व्हेन इट कम्स टू men also go through a lot of mental pressures associated with, whether they have to be the single, bread earning member of the family. Yeah, there are certain achievement myths that are associated to men that are not so associated to women. तो वो उनके एक अलग pressures होते हैं. But women generally, when they go through the maternity and they come back into the workplace, हमारी organization में, for example, there are usually 5 months by policy that maternity log avail karte hain, and then usually they attach their annual vacations also to 6 months ke baad. So there's a very big period, it's half the performance year that has gone by the time you re-enter the workplace. So it is very important to, it's a separate kind of a return ship kind of when the person is coming back into the workforce, and there should be elements and factors in the workplace that should help the individual, help the woman, kind of adapt to the new environment, क्योंकि वो environment काफी change हो चुका होता है in the 6 months that she's away, and the line manager plays a critical role, HR plays a critical role, there has to be a colleague or a peer who can play a critical role. So those factors need to be there, they need to be made aware of. The line manager needs to know कि अगर आपकी कोई flexi hours हैं, flexible timings हैं, that this new mother can avail, the line managers need to know of those. Sometimes line managers are not aware of those policies, and then they start placing demands over the new mother, new incoming, mother, जिनसे वो cope नहीं कर पाती. And it's important for the line managers to know what those policies are, so that they can, in a mutually, beneficial way, decide what the new work arrangement is going to be. It's a very simple thing to do, and yet I see it being missed all the time, and then sometimes we are too nice. In our minds, we are being too nice and too compassionate, or वो भी एक negative चीज हो जाती है in the workplace, because the workplace is a very sensitive environment where there are many kinds of, not just there are genders, but there are also many kinds of sensibilities, right? So sometimes when we are too nice, for example, when I returned from my maternity, somebody actually came to me and asked me if I'm breastfeeding my baby or not. So things like that put you in a, they shock you like anything. And they're like, this isn't it too personal a question to ask someone, for that matter. तो वही बात हो जाती है कि हम educate, हमें कोई करता है ना, हम खुद होते हैं, और ना हम शायद इतना सोचते हैं इन चीजों के बारे में. But so now almost a lot of organizations now are providing daycare facilities, and that's fantastic. I mean, organizations are really waking up to this phenomena कि there are more and more mothers are in the workplace. So ये facility सिर्फ mothers के लिए नहीं होनी चाहिए, but generally for male employees also, it's just a very compassionate thing to do. There are certain policies, flexible policies, flexi time hai, and allow conveyance provide करते हैं अगर आपको more than one time, if you have to leave the workplace and go and check your baby and come back, तो उसके लिए facility है. So these are some of the things that our organizations are waking up to, and that's great. However, still, I feel that a lot of gap exists when it comes to just knowing what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, simply by doing, small informal sessions around, things like maybe things around, the kind of biases that we have towards women who are coming back as new mothers now. So they can make their own decisions. You don't need to choose for them, right? They can make their own decisions whether or not they are able to work late, or they can do a certain project, or they can travel or not. Hum in our niceness also, we sometimes make these assumptions about women, especially new mothers, कि वो travel नहीं कर पाएंगी या वो late नहीं बैठ पाएंगी. So just have a dialogue and discover that. So बहुत ज़रूरी है to bring in.
So, Samrah, thank you so much, because you have hit on a number of sensitive areas here. And I think it is generally on a larger scale culturally, I think, how to be sensitive towards others, how to give space to others, how to be asking the right kind of, or use the right language, be it men or women. But when it comes to actually women coming back after their maternity leave, that's a different ballgame altogether. So that is something we would like to know, and I'm going to give it over to Gulbano. This sensitization concept, especially when we talk about genders. What does it entail? And you wanted to make a comment, so please, over to you.
Gulbano, you're on mute.
Aapka mute hai. Gulbano, you'll have to unmute. Thanks.
Okay, so first of all, Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. It is an immense pleasure to be part of this much needed panel discussion. And I am very honored and thankful to FranklinCovey for giving me this opportunity. Before I embark upon this topic, I really want to set the stage for all this, the premises on which, the foundation on which this premises stands. And that, to me, in my humble opinion, is that gender inequality concerns are global. We need to understand this, that this is not specific to any culture, society, or country. It's a global phenomena. So a study of 2017 World Economic Forum reveals that women have only 65% of rights, opportunities, and access to resources that world men enjoy. And not only that, the difference between these disparities and the effort that is being made to do away with this disparity might vary from country to country. But the researchers of WEF say that if we go on current pace, it's going to take 100 years to eradicate this disparity. So, ladies and gentlemen, embrace this fact. I do these sessions and I get a lot of pushback that people sometimes don't even want to embrace that there is a phenomena called gender inequality that exists in society and at the workplaces. Now, this brings me to basically what was asked about gender sensitization. So what is gender sensitization? To me, creating awareness about these gender inequality concerns and instilling empathy on in both the genders to recognize the imbalance and challenges that are created by these inequalities and the concerns is actually gender sensitization. And to actually evaluate the stereotypes and biases that Samrah also spoke about and Khaula also touched upon. And, Huma also mentioned, we have these stereotypes and these implicit biases in our minds that we don't even sometimes know about. And it is okay to have them because that is how we are brought up. We observe, we see, and the neurosciences departments of the world are now recognizing that human behavior is actually a function of these biases that we carry. And it's not evil to carry them as long as you're ready to evaluate them and question them from time to time. We all carry them. So do you think it's only men who carry these implicit biases? Surprise. Women in an international survey showed that 48% of the women believe that men make better leaders. These are self-limiting beliefs that we also carry as women.
I think Gulbano has,
We've lost her
for a minute, but I think she was touching upon a very important topic. Go ahead, Huma.
Yeah, so from this, what I was also thinking of, since we are talking about mental health, and we are actually celebrating the mental health week, and understanding that how do these taboos, they come in our way in organizations.
And I always, when I'm talking to
Sorry, Gulbano, हुआ ये था कि आपकी आवाज बीच में से चली गई थी, आपका नेट चला गया था, so we could not hear you.
अब आप mute हैं. You need to unmute yourself.
Me mute, acha.
There you go.
My net seems to be working fine. Can you guys hear me now?
You're back on now.
Okay.
So you were telling us a little bit about these biases, how these shortcuts are important for us to survive and live in this world. However, as long as we check them, and these unconscious biases should not impede or impact negatively the relationships that we have. How do you think that these gender differences and being a little more sensitive towards, how does this impact women or the mental health, especially when we live with these biases and we accept them. And you're right, it's not just men who have these biases, even women who live with these biases. How does it impact the mental,
Yeah. So I was moving to that, and I always quote, with due apologies to all women, including myself, because I have fought with my biases, having been in a senior management position. I quote Albright, who's a former Secretary of State, who says there is a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And that is the extreme opinion that I take when I speak to women about supporting other women. And the factors that you're talking about, how it helps, how it impacts the mental health, I want to touch upon that. Basically, there are 5 factors which really, because of these gender inequalities, impact. The first one is, which I refer to as DDD, it's double duty dilemma. Because a working woman, after work, she's expected to go home and take care of household chores and childcare and other responsibilities. And this double burden that you have translates or manifests into anxiety, depression, and mental health and physical health issues. And a UN study of 2015 reveals that women in developing countries are doing 3 hours more unpaid labor daily as compared to women in the developed countries, who are doing 2 hours of daily unpaid work. So it shows that somewhere there it is basically a little, men are helping a little more with household chores in the developed countries. The second factor that manifests into physical and mental challenges for women at a workplace is gender-based violence. Now, we have to remember that gender-based violence is not only physical. It manifests in emotional abuse also, in the form of threats, in the form of controlling behavior, demeaning attitudes towards women who are breaking the what do we call it, glass ceilings, and who are doing jobs that society doesn't think women should be doing. So that is, and violence in countries where the data is amalgamated on gender violence, even there, the reported violence where women actually go out and seek help is only under 40%. So women who go through violence, there are less than 40% women who actually go to friends or family. And the ones that go to health agencies like psychiatrists or some counselors and all, or enforcement agencies like police, they are lower than 10%. So all the emails and the LinkedIn messages that I get of women who are either being harassed or suffering from abusive attitude at homes or in offices, the first thing that tell me is that we want your advice, but please don't report us and please don't talk to it about it to anyone. And financial sector is a very small place where everyone knows everyone. There are not many people, and perpetrators in harassment mostly are ones that are common from people to people. And even then, unfortunately, since you guys are saying it's speaking the unspeakable, and I'm trying to muster up my courage to talk about these things, in 5 years I've not been able to convince even a single woman in the corporate sector to go to the committee that we have anti-harassment law in Pakistan, which is 2010. I have not been able to convince anyone. I've provided them support in other ways in trying them to get a job in another organization. And then there are instances where I have gone through this. For instance, the postpartum depression that Khaula has spoken about, I want to share that 53% of countries, according to 2015 UN study, have at least 14 weeks of maternity leave. And even less, only 48% of organizations over the world have paternity leaves. So this shows the sensitivity, despite the fact that it's improved over a period of time. For instance, I had 2 children while I was at a very senior level in my banking career. So when my boss used to sit in Karachi, and when he called me and he said, your annual leave is in April, we have a product launch, so please take it in 2 months further. And when I tried to tell him, those were the times you could not even openly talk about it. And when I told him that I can't do that, and he very aggressively said, why can't you be accommodating? And I said, because you don't have post-mature children, you have premature children. So if anything, I would be going to maternity leave in April because that's my due date. So, these are some of the realities that we have. So other than, this abuse, this physical abuse, this, double duty dilemma that women have, this then results to lower productivity with other physical and mental challenges, and which in turn, it's a vicious cycle, then goes to low pay. For the similar jobs, women can have, and that is also in international research, that even in developed countries, for every similar job, a woman is paid 70 cents for every $1 that a man is paid on the same job with the same competence level. So these are international researches. So my personal example is that I have mustered up a lot of courage to start speaking about it now after about 12 years, that one good morning, despite having rating 1, my CEO decided to reduce my pay by 100,000, and there was no reason attached to it. And my boss or the HR head or nobody could explain that to anyone. And my human resource manager, who was a woman, she called me and she said, I don't have a leg to stand on when I take out this letter because I have no justification for it. And I have no way of finding out how do I, give you a solace on that. And later on, after a year or so, she resigned and she went abroad. But what I'm trying to say is that these are the issues. Then we go to the fourth main factor that you were asking me, what are the factors that manifest to mental health issues, is harassment. So we have this, 93% of women in Pakistan, unfortunately, in public and private sector, allegedly have reported sexual harassment in one way or another. And these are the figures given by FOSPA, which is Federal Ombudsman, Protection Agency. And they quote, these 93% figures. So I think what Samrah said was that corporate environment is now improving over a period of time. So I don't just want to give a doomsday picture. I think there are a lot of companies who are actually doing a great job in giving daycare. When I was in Rifan Best Foods, Unilever Best Foods, Musharraf Hai was one person who kept inviting me to Karachi, offering me that there are daycares. So, it's not all black, but at the same time, we need lots and lots of efforts. And I want to today, from this forum, want to request all women especially, that they should be very, very supportive to women and avoid what I refer to as queen bee syndrome. Because when we make it big, being women, in this male dominant society, we feel, why does it have to be easy for anyone else? And that's also an implicit bias that we carry. Sometimes we're not even aware of that. We just say कि मैं अगर इस चीज से गुजरी हूँ तो बाकी खवातीन क्यों नहीं गुजरेंगी?
So I agree. I understand. It is a very tall order for women in this society to do something that is either recognizable or to make a mark for themselves. However, having said that, it's and thank you for sharing those staggering statistics. It's for the listeners. It's absolutely imperative to understand that this is a reality. It happens, and it happens to men as well. But we're specifically focusing on women mental health because remember, the women is the core of the home. And that's where it starts from. And I think I want to now address it back to Khaula and ask, Khaula, the patients or the people that come to you, the women who come to you, and when they talk about mental, or when you understand or you diagnose them that they are suffering from a mental illness, what are the common factors? Because you see, there are a lot of normal, regular people who might come across this, and listen to our talk they need to know that a lot of things that they might be doing, which they might not be aware of, is impacting the mental health of their mothers or their sisters or their wives or their daughters. So starting from there, because that's where that's how the offshoot, then we all go to, to our corporate world and our respective workplaces.
Yes, and also follow up, because I think what I'm also really interested to know from you is this, most of the mental illnesses are manageable, and if I'm not using the right vocabulary, or curable might not be, but manageable. But then why is this that there is so much reluctance, and what can professionals like us do in organization, and what should be done in, at least where we have some sort of I would say influence, what needs to be done there so that people are more open to take help, specifically women are more open to seek help, because it's about management, it's about creating that balance, and what can we do to facilitate that? And I would be really interested to learn from you on that also.
So the two folds of a question.
Yes, there are too many questions.
So, yeah, go ahead.
All right. First coming to Maryam's question, which was that what are the common presentations with which women would come and present, and what are the factors that are involved in those presentations? So women commonly. So I'm running a private practice in defense, and I work in a public sector hospital in the morning. So I see two extreme of population. One is coming, is affluent, and the other one is slightly less educated at times and not aware of problems. The common theme that usually I would totally, quote Gulbano over here, the double duty dilemma that she mentioned is one of the core problems which leads to mental stress in women, because there are certain responsibilities, a certain role that the society has built around them, in terms of doing perfectly in the home, managing the children, their schools, their routines. And at the same time, if they're working women or if they're homemakers, the other home-related duties or their relationship to balance all that. Now that creates a lot of stress, mental stress, which further leads to anxiety, depressive symptoms. And depression under what when they come to us, they would come and say that nobody understands us. Koi hamari baat nahi sunta. And they would say कि कोई हमारी बात सुनता नहीं है, समझता नहीं है. And then they would say कि वो, if we mention it, they would say it would be seen as a sign of personal weakness. Okay? So
yeah.
घर
or
के
they'll
अंदर
say leave your job, or they'll say कि, that's not important. Focus on,
yes.
And that's normally what is presented.
Yeah. And then there is one, a personal weakness, and secondly, mothers who are working in organizations or are working women, they somehow, for some reason, have some inbuilt intrinsic guilt, as if they are, which is coming from the society, which is as if they are neglecting the children, as if they are not, totally doing the role that they were supposed to do in the society. That itself creates a cognitive dissonance, and this leads to further, development of cognitive errors of thinking. Depression के अंदर we call it negative automatic thoughts, जो आपको जब इस किस्म की overwhelming situation बनती है, तो ये thoughts आपकी बनती जाती हैं, which, and then when you don't find a direction, तो वो उसके अंदर फिर नाउमीदी, hopelessness, low self-esteem, helplessness की feeling, you feel trapped. You don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. So depression is anxiety, and depression is a very common presentation which we see. And jahan tak taluk hai, the other core psychiatric illnesses wo bhi aati hain, like obsessive compulsive and schizophrenia, yes, but ye presentation jo hai depression ki bahut zyada hai. And the other most common thing in Pakistan that we see, jo ke West mein hame itni zyada nazar nahi aati, is called functional neurological system disorder, which we see a lot. Now, I'm just going to explain this term a little bit to you. A lot of women, when they are under extreme psychological stress or burden, that psychological stress creates physical symptoms. Now, unko koi outlet nahi hai. तो अटेंशन उनको कैसे मिलती है? अगर वो बेहोश हो जाए, अगर उनका बाजू काम करना छोड़ जाए, अगर वो कहे मुझे चक्कर आ रहे हैं, अगर वो गिर जाए, तो then somebody would come and say कि ओ इसको कुछ हो गया. And some of them in extreme cases would have pseudo seizures, fits. Today I saw a patient who came with blindness. The symptom was blindness. I can't see anymore. I woke up in the morning, I can't see. Now, this is all psychological stress manifesting in terms of physical symptoms, and it's a major presentation which we see in women in Pakistan and overall. So the other part of the question, that what can be done about it, is, of course, it's going to begin at home. You need to have an environment where your family, your spouse, even if it is a joint family system, your in-laws are aware, they're understanding of your role, and you are able to, communicate with them. So communication and talking about this thing is really important. Jo ke, when you look at it from a point of personal weakness or guilt, then you're not able to do it. You don't want to be labeled ke nahi ye to nahi kar sakti. And if I quote postpartum psychosis, I mean, we have a colleague who is the only psychiatrist in Skardu at the moment, trained here at KE and went there. Now, she was mentioning the other day that there is a very high divorce rate, and there are remarriages that are happening. Ek shadi ke baad dusri shadi. Postpartum, कि depression हुआ है, psychosis हुई है, और वो ठीक नहीं हो रही, तो एक और शादी कर. Now that in itself for women is creating, a lot of pressure and stress, because उनका जो homemakers हैं, उनके लिए तो their home is their sanctuary, and that is the place that needs to be stable. So support from the spouse. यानी सबसे पहला तो आपका यहाँ पे आता है married women के लिए, or if they are unmarried, from their brothers or anybody that they are close to in their network, and then from the family and the society and the place that they're working in. जहाँ पे वो हैं, वहाँ पे भी उनको एक ऐसा environment चाहिए जहाँ उनकी बात समझी जाए. तो so these are the things. Huma, aapka question tha regarding,
you see, yes, of course, all of this starts at home, and you're absolutely right that the acceptance at home or the support at home is very, very important for anybody to come out or accept the mental illnesses or states, or seek out help is the second stage. The first stage is that there is acceptance, there is self-acceptance, there is acceptance around you, and then you seek out help. So yes, your own home is very, very important, and there should be more communication and within the circles to talk about these issues. But at the same time, when we look at organizations and we look at the female population as the organization, and we've been talking about postpartum depression or other any mental issues or stress which is there, is there anything that you would suggest that organizations should be doing vis-a-vis communication and making it easier for them? So that was one thing that I wanted your aspect, but of course I'm going to ask Samrah that maybe there is something that organizations they're already doing with this respect.
But from your perspective, Khaula, if you want to just put in a couple of,
Okay, so just a quick answer to that. I think sensitization in the organization regarding these topics is extremely important. How a woman feels during her menstrual cycle. There are hormonal changes. There are times. This is also one area जिसके अंदर organization में बहुत ज़्यादा लोगों को problem feel होती है, बहुत reluctance है, कोई बात नहीं करता. But there are mood changes associated with it. और थोड़ा सा आप अगर aware करा दें, and there are small group discussions जिसके अंदर people become aware of the fact that these are things that normally women experience. तो उससे जो है उनकी understanding में बहुत ज़्यादा फर्क आ सकता है. That is, I think, the only way to go about it कि आप जो है उनको aware कराएं, उनको बताएं, awareness generate कराएं, stigma को नीचे करने के लिए, तो that is really going to help.
Thank you so much, Khaula. So Samrah, over to you. If there is something that maybe organizations are doing in sensitization of mental illnesses or issues which are related to women, besides the gender sensitization जो हम कर रहे हैं, but more focused towards mental well-being.
जी बिल्कुल. Mental well-being की जहाँ तक बात है, तो organizations have great policies around covering employee and their families medical or medical facilities. अक्सर organizations extend करती हैं for immediate family, and some like UEP also cover parents. उस medical facility में mental health को भी include करना चाहिए, and I am sure करती होंगी organizations, but from my personal experience I can say that my organization covers therapy, psychotherapy under this policy. So जिसकी वजह से employees have this great opportunity, this very relieving opportunity to seek mental health through the organization. There's a department of occupational health in our company. Many other companies also have occupational health departments. There are dedicated people in this department जो लोगों को extend करते हैं ये facility, advice देते हैं. They are doctors, so they are certified people, credible people who advise employees on their physical health, mental health, who also are responsible sometimes to have sessions, awareness sessions around certain disease, certain chronic disease, not just mental but physical aspects also. Health days, provide checkups, free checkups to employees. So ये एक ऐसा environment create करने में मदद देता है जहाँ पे it's not taken for granted कि अगर एक एम्प्लॉई ऑफिस आ रहा है रोजाना 9 से लेके 5 तक तो वो ठीक होगा और भला चंगा होगा. So don't take it for granted.
Especially, I'm sure, Samrah, after COVID, I think organizations have had to revisit the policies. And now that the generation, the Gen Zs
and the millennials who are now about to step in,
and the colonials after 10, 15 years. So tell me, how do organizations adapt and work with that paradigm shift? Because I'm sure and the biggest problem with millennials coming in is actually the people who are there, for them to change the paradigm, question the paradigm, and adapt and accept the new generation. How have you been working around? Because they are so aware, they expect flexibility, by default. They are expecting a certain environment, conduciveness. And in terms of mental health, I think they're more vocal. They speak up more about rights. Our kids have now, who are now about to enter the workforce, are more demanding.
Gen Z.
They really have now put a lot of question on the kind of policies we hold now. I think the earlier lot were more accepting of our social taboos, and they're like, chalta hai, koi baat nahi, hamare saath ye hota hai, hamare maon ke saath bhi hua, naniyon ke saath bhi hua, but they're not going to take it. They're like, no, what are you going to do for us? Has that challenge come about in your organization, or what do you think other organizations are now, how are they going to question their existing policies?
Yes, there's an immense shift in that. So you see, the thing is, अब इतनी क्यों बात होती है harassment की? अगर when it comes to harassment, when it comes to gender sensitization, अब क्यों इतनी बात हो रही है? उसका रीजन यही है क्योंकि जो previous generations थी, वहाँ पे ये चीजें डिस्कस ही नहीं होती थी, ये कोई मसला ही नहीं था, दिस वाज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम. So but now there is a clash of generations, and so the baby boomers are exiting the organizations and the millennials have already entered, Gen Zs are entering, and smack in the middle of all this are Generation X, who are expected to make sense out of all of that. Because baby boomers and millennials, they don't see eye to eye, they can't even communicate at times with one another, and Xers are expected to kind of mediate. So this is how the actual workplace is right now. So हम generally जब focus groups करते हैं तो we are cognizant of the fact कि there are different groups who have different needs. Person-centered therapy भी यही कहती है कि आप लोगों को accept करें as they are, and don't try to necessarily convert them into something. Just accept first of all who fundamentally they are. तो जब वो उनकी needs different हैं, उनका मेक डिफरेंट है, उनकी एक्सपेक्टेशंस डिफरेंट हैं, तो उनके ओपिनियंस भी डिफरेंट होंगे. सो they need to be given that individuality in the organization. So अगर आप कोई learning cafes कर रहे हैं, आप trainings कर रहे हैं, आपको इस ध्यान में रखना चाहिए कि there are different groups. So it's not what works for one group will not definitely work for another. So customize करें चीजों को. The more you customize your efforts, the more impact it will bring about. I remember distinctly some years ago we did a learning cafe जिसमें हमने topic ही रखा था, and baby boomers and millennials and Generation Xers, they were all there, and इतने excited थे millennials because they for the first time probably felt that they have a voice. क्योंकि वो they are younger people compared to baby boomers. Baby boomers are older, they are more stable, established, so they take more liberties also, so unlike the other groups. So to bridge that gap, it's important to customize our efforts, customize our initiatives, and accept people as they are. Just because they have different needs, it doesn't mean that they are unreasonable और इनको समझ नहीं है दुनिया की, या अभी बच्चे हैं समझ जाएंगे. Labels, we should not put people in a box. The worst thing that we do is in general is put people in a box, right? And we should give them the opportunity in the organization to freely discuss and normalize this aspect. कि जी आप आपकी ये needs.
The normalization process, are you doing this with an intentional effort to kind of hold little group meetings and explain?
Yes. So the focus groups, for example, that we do are different. Millennials का अलग group हम करते हैं, for example, Generation X का अलग करते हैं. Appraisal process जो है, we need to understand that what worked for the previous generations will not work now. The way feedback was given पहले, अब नहीं ऐसा होगा. So you need to make more, you need to make your performance management system as simple as Facebook or probably Instagram, and you need to kind of understand what is the need of the newer generations, and not make assumptions for them, not think for them.
Have you noticed, like, is there the gap we're talking about of our generation between the men and the women in the workplace, or even their mindsets? Are you sensing, or are you feeling, or are you seeing that maybe the gap is closing and boys and girls are now equally thinking on the same level and there's not much of a difference? Are you seeing that in the Pakistani younger generation in the workplace, or you still think that there's still a very vast difference between how boys and how girls look at their careers, how they look at the workplace, how their expectations?
This is a very heavy question, and I don't have the data to back my assertions. I'm just going to give my opinion. I just feel that हम extremes पे चले जाते हैं ना. So now women and young ladies, they are entering into the workforce because they are of the mind that मुझे जो self worth मिलेगी वो अपने career से मिलेगी. Now we are glorifying careers, for the wrong reasons again. This is again, we're making a mistake, and we are looking for people, and this is great. I mean, if you know what you want in life and you are choosing your life partner according to that, your in-laws according to that, where you choose to live according to that, that's great. But if you are doing it under the false impression that, अगर मेरा career नहीं होगा, मेरी job नहीं होगी, तो मेरी कोई worth भी नहीं होगी. I will be no one. ये एक अलग problem में हम जा रहे हैं
That's
रफ्ता
another
रफ्ता.
rat race. Okay.
Exactly.
Because I was just trying to link it with the mental health and see how maybe probably the younger
Yeah, but
generation.
of course, it all again boils down to the same thing that we were talking about, that how do professionals, organizations, people like us, they can help create a balance between people, between different generations, between the genders, so that's where the real thing is, that what are the efforts that we're making to create that balance. So that's what
Yeah,
the
there was
crux
just
is.
trying to get a little bit of,
So
your
I
mind.
think GB is wanting to say something. Maybe
And
the last words of wisdom from GB.
More on how women can feel secure in an inclusive workplace. Thoda sa, a little, because women is one very important, part of our topic today. And I think if there is that sense of security.
We have, we've gone above the hour.
Yeah, so we're 6 minutes above the hour, maybe another couple of minutes. And if people who are watching, I hope you can hang in there, because this is just, we're going to wrap it off with Gulbano, over to you. GB, over to you.
Just my two bits on what Huma was saying. This is very, very basic, and I'm sorry to draw you back to the very, very back to basics, what we call that. Why do we have these gender-based discussions now, as Samrah pointed out? I want to point out a difference between sex and gender. And I want people to remember that, sex is what you're born with, and gender is basically what society makes you believe in terms of professions, articles, and even feelings at times, that according to your gender, this is what you're supposed to feel, and this is how emotional you should be, and this is how
the job description for the gender.
So so basically it is introduced, the gender is introduced very early in your life. While sex is given by nature and it stays the same whichever country, society, or family you belong to, gender changes from the society to society and environment to environment, because it's a social construct. For instance, you would not expect maybe a man to be a nurse, or you would not expect a man to express emotions or maybe cry if he's hurt or he's feeling emotionally stressed. So a lot of sympathy and empathy for those men also, who maybe are more artistic than they are expected to be, or women who are maybe wanting to do jobs that traditionally men were doing. So what my basic findings and humble learning after doing all these sessions is that we have to break these boxes. Who has decided that a woman will wear a pink and baby boy will wear blue? It has to start at that stage. I remember that, I want to share this personal experience, that a cousin of mine came to see me while I was working in a bank, and she came from US and very educated environment and all that. And first she was greeted by my father-in-law, who was trying to make a tea for his wife. Then she met my son, who was a toddler, and he was playing with a dollhouse. Then she asked about me, and they said, "वो तो अभी दफ्तर से नहीं आई, आज closing है." And then she saw my husband watering the plants. So when I came back, she looked at me and she said, "Jibi, आपके घर में कोई ID crisis नहीं चल रहा major किस्म का? A man is working in the kitchen, a woman is in the office because the closing is there." And at that time, I actually felt that maybe we're all abnormal, maybe we're doing stuff which we're not supposed to do. And the guilt that, Samrah spoke about, and Khaula also mentioned, that we carry this guilt as mothers when we go to work, that, maybe we're doing something wrong and nobody explains it to us, that household chores, career, making an income, this is all a family responsibility. And family has to support each other, and that bonding. And thank God we are in joint family systems still, where that sort of support is lent, but those biases are also, that interference is also there. So the other question that Huma asked was, how can we change this? And my humble request to each and every one is that happy women make happy mothers and happy wives and happy daughters. And maybe good professionals also. If somebody wants to do
also. Happy leaders and happy bosses also.
Yeah. So if a woman is wanting to do something just because of her gender, she should not be limited in her role, because if she's not herself content in whatever she's doing, you can forget about how she's going to raise children. If you put a that limiting bar on her and say that if you're locked up in the house and you're not following your career, you're going to be raising better children. I'm sorry, I've seen some very, very career oriented, ambitious women raise very good children, and I have seen some housewives not do as good a job, and it varies from people to people. At the end of the day, men and women have to be happy in what they are doing, and if they are content and happy, they're going to be better mentally and physically. So thank you so much for giving me this
दूसरे लोगों
opportunity.
की बातें नहीं सुननी कि जो लोग क्या कहते हैं. Yes, I think that is beautifully summed up, that it's all about being happy. And I think you need to make have your own missions and your own personal, agendas, as opposed to what others are wanting you to do. And it is a tough,
Yes, it is. So on happiness also, I would like to quote one of our things that we say in 7 Habits is that, for happiness, you need to learn how to carry your own weather and not be dependent on the outside circumstances for your happiness. So that is what I was thinking when she was saying that.
That's a great.
Yeah. And I would just like to add on that when it comes to mental health and well-being for women, if there are only 2 things they believe in, that it's not a sign of personal weakness and they're not alone in this. A lot of women go through it. I think it's going to help them immensely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for saying this, because from today's conversation should not be the one and all. I think this should be a series of conversations, because chille ke jin se lekar corporate environment ke jinnon se lekar humne, we have to literally learn to deal with these internal fears or constructs that we built for ourselves and question them. So we first have to question our own paradigms, and then not feel ashamed or guilty to even have conversations with your counterparts or with your colleagues. And even if the environment is not providing you that platform, you go ahead and have that conversation as women, because you have the right, you're equal. Well,
important.
As long as men can have babies, then they can be equal. But anyway, so thank you so much, Samrah, Khaula, GB. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maryam.
Thank you, Huma.
Thank you, Huma and Maryam. I think it's a great work that you guys are doing. I want to compliment you, and you make us proud.
Thank you.
You make all of us very proud.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking out time. I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
Khaula.
it.
Thank you. It was really very useful. Lovely meeting all of you, all 3 of you. Thank you, Samrah. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, audience.